Good morning, everyone. Thanks for coming along this morning. It's good to see you all again. So as Colin said, my name is Tom Battams, and I am from WPA Health Insurance. I'm based in Leeds, but with WPA we can have customers that are based all across the country. We specialise in health insurance. We work with individuals, families, and businesses. It's a very topical time still for health insurance with the challenges that the NHS are facing. So there has been a real sort of broad range of different types of clients that I've worked with that want health insurance for different reasons, and we'll cover those sort of throughout the presentation, and I'll talk to you about who it is that I work with mainly, and how we all may be able to work together also. So WPA, first of all, we specialise in health insurance. We only do health insurance. Some of the other providers will offer different types of insurances, home insurance, car insurance, for example, but at WPA we specialise in health insurance. Slightly different model to the others, that we are a franchise model, which means that when we set policies up with individuals or groups, I then work with that group for their entirety with WPA, helping out with administration tasks, helping them to find medical professionals, helping them with claims, anything and everything that they would need help with. So it just provides that little bit more of a personal service than you may traditionally have with an insurance policy. And then if we look at health insurance in the market, there's currently around 8 million people insured. So that's individuals insured with private medical cover. 3.3 million on a cash plan. So your private medical essentially covers anything where you might end up in a hospital requiring treatment, whereas a cash plan will pay for everyday costs such as dental, optical, physio cover. It's a lower cost, more simple option, whereas your private medical is your full health insurance as such. And then if we look at the sort of spread between corporate and individual, this is actually changing slightly over the last year. Even on there, we've got it as 70% corporate. So that means that 70% of the policies are through businesses, 30% are through families and individuals, whereas the families and individuals are really increasing this year. I guess it must relate to the issues that the NHS are having. People are feeling that money that they may have spent elsewhere, they're now using it to insure themselves and set up a health insurance policy. So if we look at some myths and truths that are relating to health insurance, these are sort of questions or queries that I get asked a lot by prospective customers. If we look at the myths, PMI only covers major medical treatment. PMI is only for old people. PMI can be too expensive, and we already have the NHS. So I then would speak to my customers and sort of put those myths to bed as such. And first thing that we do is look at what is included in our policies. And it's very, very comprehensive, from your hospital treatment to your cancer care to your specialist diagnostic testing and consultations. But also you can include your everyday costs such as your dental and optical treatment. So sometimes people don't actually understand exactly what can be included. Mental health treatment is now massive in health insurance. Remote GP services. So often the package is a lot more comprehensive than people initially expect. And then if we look at the second one, PMI is only for old people. You trust your luck. I get this a lot. Oh, I'm young. I'm okay. I'm going to be all right. But we never know. It's sort of horrible to say, but we never know when we may need support. We never know when we might experience a new medical condition. And with health insurance, the younger you are, it's actually the better it is to set up a policy, because pre-existing conditions are a factor. Doesn't mean to say that all pre-existing conditions wouldn't be covered. There's different types of underwriting that you can look into, but the younger you are, generally you're going to have less pre-existing conditions, which means that if you were to take out a policy, the likelihood of you being covered for more conditions or all conditions is much higher. Next one we get is it's too expensive. Medical bills are fun. Surprise invoices. What's life like without a little financial thrill? The reason I've put that line in there is because there's been a huge shift in people self-funding for private medical care over the last couple of years. So what that means is they haven't got a private health insurance policy. They go to the NHS for their treatment. The NHS may turn around and say, right, we can get you a consultation, but just to give you an idea, it might be 12 months. If you do then need a scan or any form of diagnostic testing, like a blood test, X-ray, ultrasound, it may then be another 6 months. So people are saying, I'm just going to pay for it. They pay for their consultation, they then may pay for a scan, and by the time they've paid for a couple of bits like that, it probably would have covered years of an insurance policy. Because medical bills, private medical bills, when charged by the hospitals themselves, they are very expensive. But we're seeing a huge shift in people self-funding. So I'm trying to sort of spread the word that if you did have your health insurance policy in place, first of all, you're covered for everything rather than just that condition that you're now paying for. But also, it would probably work out cheaper in the long run than you self-funding for those expensive treatments. Last one, we have the NHS, and the NHS, when you're in the system, are absolutely fantastic, and they do absolutely everything they can to help everybody, but they are just stretched. There's not enough doctors, there's not enough money in the NHS, and there's too many people essentially living in our country to be able to cater for. So people are finding it difficult just to get a GP appointment, let alone a consultation or any diagnostic testing. People are going onto Google and searching for symptoms, and we know that that's not the correct thing to do. Whereas if you did have a health insurance policy, you know that fast access to diagnosis and treatment is assured. And especially for people who need to work or need to move for their work, self-employed people, tradesmen especially, time off work for them waiting for a consultation or a doctor's appointment can cost them a fortune. So the reassurance of being able to get in and seen quickly can be a massive bonus. So the main problems that we're seeing are the waiting list. They believe there's going to be just over 8 million people in the country on a waiting list by the end of this year. That could be to see a specialist, to have a form of testing, or to have hospital treatment, which is a massive number when you think about our population. If over 8 million people are sat on a waiting list, it's a huge number. And there's also around 300,000 people out of that waiting list that are having to wait more than a year. I've got personal experience of a couple of people that have actually had to wait over 2 years just for that initial consultation. So the challenge is that, again, the NHS do everything they can, but they believe that they've put a number of around 5 years to clear the backlog. I'm not sure where they got that from or how they're trying to tackle that issue. But it's definitely not going in the right direction in terms of lowering that waiting list. Since I've been with WPA anyway, it's only ever actually increased. And another big issue that we see are the cancellations. So if you have an appointment or hospital treatment or surgery and it gets cancelled, you should receive within 28 days, which is still quite a long time, but you should receive your next appointment. But we're seeing a third of those people actually not receiving that next appointment. So they're then having to call up, go back to the GP and almost start the process again. People are just sort of being lost. If you're not classed as an emergency patient, it's very easy at the moment to just sort of be left behind. And again, that can cause real upset and stress for people, especially, if they are needing to work or they have families to look after, other things going on in their lives. It can be really challenging. So your main solutions to health insurance are prompt access for diagnosis and treatment. The most important bit. Conditions can get worse if we leave them. And as we said, you're not going to have to worry about waiting lists. Freedom to choose when and where you're treated. If you are somebody who runs business, is self-employed, can't necessarily just... If you get an appointment put through in the post and you might have a commitment that day, it can be then very difficult to change it. Whereas with private health insurance, you can choose exactly what day, what time, what hospital you go to for your treatment. And there are also, so all of your treatment, again, would be taking place in a private hospital. And when it relates to cancer treatment, there is drugs that are available privately that aren't available in the NHS. Excuse me. Due to costing, whereas there are the sort of the latest, most advanced drugs, especially relating to cancer, would be available privately. So that's sort of looking at it from a personal family perspective, but we can also look at it from the benefit of offering health insurance through the company. It can be a great benefit for retention and recruitment. I think previously people would apply for a job and they'd be worried about how much they're getting paid, maybe how many days holiday they get a year. Whereas now, people are asking, do I get life insurance? Do I get health insurance? What's my pension contributions? People are a lot more aware of what comes with a job itself and the benefits that come along with it. And health insurance could be a really cost-effective solution for companies to be able to offer. It's also a taxable benefit, so the company would be able to some tax on that. And then it could be cheaper than a pay rise. If companies are struggling a little bit, it could be cheaper for them to offer an additional benefit than it would be to provide a pay rise, which still may keep their employees happy. And again, it's a nice thing to be able to offer. It can also help to avoid absent employees. As we said earlier, if somebody is waiting for treatment on the NHS, they may be off work for a long time, whereas if they've got private health insurance, they would be able to get in and be seen and diagnosed and treated quickly, and then hopefully back to work, so it won't affect the business as much. I've now just got a bit of a working example of how private medical insurance can work. This is actually a true story. I changed the name just for data confidentiality reasons, but this is a true story of one of my customers. So Scott injured his knee playing football. He actually shouldn't have been playing football anymore. I should have retired years and years and years ago, but he got his boots back out for that famous one last game, and he injured his knee. It was a really bad injury, so he did go directly to A&E. When he was at A&E, he was advised that there was no break, but post X-ray, he was required to see a specialist because they believed that he had some serious ligament damage. When he went to see the specialist, he was informed that the potential time frame would be about 6 months for a consultation, but then it could be up to 18 months for an MRI scan. He knew that he was in real pain, and he knew it was serious, so he sort of felt, well, if I then need any sort of surgery or treatment, I could be looking at 2 years best. Scott was actually a builder, specialised in bricklaying, so he needed to work, and he was trying to work with this injury, but it was an absolute nightmare for him. So he used his WPA health insurance, set up a claim with us, and booked in to see a consultant. Within 5.5 weeks of the injury, he'd had his consultation, his MRI scan, and his surgery. So you're looking at sort of 5.5 weeks versus 2 years. And actually, they would have been able to do that surgery even sooner, but his swelling was really, really bad. So they had to give it sort of an extra, I think it was about an extra 10 days, 2 weeks for that swelling to reduce before they could do the surgery. So just a bit of a working example of how health insurance can speed up the process. Okay, and then just finally, so sort of who buys PMI, who has PMI policies? So I work with, as I mentioned earlier, everyone and anyone, to be honest. So families are very popular at the moment. I'm working with lots and lots of families who are choosing to set up a health insurance policy for themselves and their families. I work with a lot of professionals and self-employed people. Again, I guess for them, it would probably be being conscious of having time off work and not having to worry about the time that medical treatment may keep them out of work. And a lot of businesses, it's really, really popular. I mentioned earlier that we have the full private medical insurance and the cash plans. The cash plans are very popular at the moment. They're a lot cheaper. They're a very low cost option for businesses to add and sort of use as a staff benefit. So yeah, as I said, everyone and anyone, try and be as specific as you can when you're talking to people like yourselves. But it's essentially it can be anyone. And then who I work with, so really good sort of referral partners for me are IFAs. Often, especially if they're working with their business customers and they're looking at routes to save on corporation tax, they might say, why don't you look at offering health insurance to your staff? HR managers or HR consultants or companies are great referral partners for me. Often they're tasked with reviewing the staff benefits. And one of the first options they'll look at is, have you ever looked into having health insurance for your company? Insurance brokers who don't do health insurance are also fantastic contacts. They do protection, so life insurance, critical illness, etc., but they don't do health insurance. Health insurance is quite a niche insurance to work with, so quite often they won't bother dipping into that sector as well. And then also business consultants. So consultants who may go into businesses and work out if there's any improvements that they can develop. And again, often one of the avenues is to review their staff benefits packages. So that is everything from me. Thanks very much for listening. More than happy to answer any questions.
So, Tom, in your terms of your list of who you want to talk to, would you also include recruiters in that?
Um, I know a few recruiters, and to be honest, they don't really get involved with that as much, I wouldn't say.
Right, okay.
HR consultants are great. You've actually given me some really good connections there in the past. But yeah, recruiters. I mean, it'd probably be worth a conversation, but just from previous experience, it's not something that they actually get involved in too much.
Thank you. Are you
Tom, can
two
I
sort?
ask? Oh, sorry.
Go.
Great presentation, because that gives me a lot more information than I've had previously about health insurance. So as much as I do the insurance, which you've said, income protection and everything, it's really useful for having examples for the health insurance. From a point of view where somebody's making a claim, how does it work? How do they find where they go and what happens?
So everything starts with a GP essentially. So you would either go to your own GP or you can use the remote GP service that's included in our policies. The GP would then refer you to see a specialist. At that point, your insurance kicks in. We've got a system called Doctify, where you would go onto Doctify through the WPA app or online. You basically put in your postcode, put in the type of specialist that you want to see. It will then bring up a long list of all of the different specialists that you can see. It shows their rating, it shows sort of what they specialize in. You can then book it all online. So you'd be able to book it for Monday at 2 p.m. Once that's booked, you would then set the claim up with WPA. They would review it. They would give you an authorization code that you take with you to the appointment, and then any follow-up care that you need. So if that specialist did say, yes, we need a scan, you don't then need to set up another claim again. It just runs in the background with the initial claim that you've set up.
Oh, that's great. Thank you.